All right, welcome everyone. We'll just wait another couple minutes to see if anyone else shows up. Hi Jennifer and Shannon, can you guys hear me? Hi Heather, welcome. Hey. Hey, can everyone hear me?
Hear me now. Adriana, can you hear us now? No? You still can't hear us?
Okay, now I can hear you, but just on my computer. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
That'll work. I don't know why the headphones thing keeps getting messed up. Okay, great. Great, so welcome everyone. Is Patricia Lang from Clover Park Technical College here? By chance? So that is a new navigator that we wanted to welcome, so from Clover Park. And so hopefully we will be seeing her soon. And also everyone should be hearing from Caitlin Jekyll with the TAA eligibility. She's connecting individually with all the different schools and the navigators to talk more about that. So if you have questions, make sure to contact her or to contact Pam with questions that you have. So to start with today, we're going to talk about resumes. If everyone will type in the chat box the answer and all types of questions is, do you review resumes in your role as a navigator? So that I know if everyone does that or not. And if so, what programs are the students enrolled in? So Brandy does review resumes, great. Okay, Jennifer and Shannon, nursing and radiologic technology, okay. And Matt, health IT, nursing and radiology, okay, great. So nursing is a popular one. So I'm glad that several of you do review resumes, because that means these topics will be relevant to you. And Brandy does medical office and health informatics. Great. Okay. And so I'm going to give examples from several different programs, but during or afterwards, feel free to ask for any kind of examples that you might want or any questions that come up, just so that I can clarify as we go. And I can always send you example resumes afterwards as well. I have made an example pharmacy technician and an example nursing one, so that's an option that you have. So we're going to go through the PowerPoint that I sent you, so resume review and tips. And so everyone should have this, but otherwise you can just watch it on this screen, totally up to you. And so most of you know I'm Adriana Gann, and I'm from Clark College. And so feel free to reach out after if you have additional questions. So there's different types of resumes that you might have heard of. You might have heard of a master resume, chronological, functional, graphic, or visual. And today we're mostly talking about a chronological resume because your students are going to be in a program where they're currently in school. So if you're currently in school, then you're going to have something relevant that you're going to want to put at the top and you're going to want to highlight. And a lot of them, too, have an internship, a practicum, clinical, some other experience that they're going to want to highlight as well. So that's the one that does make the most sense. So can anyone tell me what is the purpose of a resume? You can just type it in or you can answer. So thinking about resumes is something we tell, okay, so showing off skills. Yeah, so one reason is that you're going to create it, you're going to kind of capture who you are, and you're going to be putting it in one place, right? So this is kind of a snapshot. And it's to get your foot in the door, to get you an interview. The interview is where you actually get the job. So the resume is just to really get past that initial portion. Okay, and Brandy says a summary of yourself. Exactly. So you have this snapshot, you have this overview and of the information where you're just quickly showing yourself, and you want it to be clean and easy to read for that reason. It doesn't need to have every detail. So with that in mind, I do have students say, well, I don't know for sure what I want to do, or what if I change fields. So I encourage them to do something called a master resume, where they're going to be keeping track of all of their experience, and then from there, taking it and tailoring it to make what we're talking about today the chronological one. So, for example, on a master resume, you say anything throughout your whole program. So we have our nursing students at 6 quarters. From the very beginning, I recommend to them, okay, it's time to start writing down every clinical you've had, different experiences, every single thing you can think of. So at the very end, you have all this great information in front of you. And then when you're in the 6th quarter and we're talking about your resume, you can pull bits and pieces of this, and you can really tailor it to maybe what kind of RN you want to be, hospital, clinical, something like that. So that's just a recommendation. If you want to, some students say, I don't want to cut stuff out. Okay, then you're going to have 2 things. You're going to have a master resume where you just list everything, and then you're going to take that and you're going to make a tailored chronological resume at the end, which is what we're going to be talking about today, the more specific one for your career field. So hiring managers spend less than 15 seconds. It's actually usually around 6 seconds looking at a resume. So that means they're quickly glancing at it. So with that in mind, the top half to the 2/3 is most important because they're seeing the top first. And less is more. You need white space. It's really important. And customizing it if the student can, even in small ways, especially with those key words. Does anyone know what an applicant tracking system is? It can tell us, or you could just do a thumbs up if you've heard of it before. Yeah, exactly. So Matt says for scoring applications, so yeah, basically it's an online tool that companies use to sort through applications. So they may be getting 300, and so instead of having a person look at 300, they basically have this machine go through and look at and weed out things. So basically, the biggest thing is to make sure someone is qualified for the position. And if it says you need a year experience, then you need a year experience, or it'll throw you out automatically. So that's something to keep in mind. And also the keywords. If they say we want someone certified in CPR, well, then you're going to want to put that on your resume so that the system sees that you do have the qualification that they're looking for. And Matt also says machine equals college administrative staff. Yeah, exactly. So at the college level, we do kind of review the resumes, right? So some things for you guys to keep in mind are, one, have them do not abbreviate. So even something like street or avenue, write it out. This is a formal document. Do not use personal pronouns, even if they have a statement at the top. Don't put I or me in there. And again, you're probably going to have them do a chronological resume, although I'll show you a functional example later. So we're going to talk about a lot of different sections today, and then I'll also give you some examples of other categories that they could add. So it really depends on the student whether they would have these or not. So we're going to go over each of these. So the very first part is the header at the very top. So the header, they definitely want name, email, and phone number. Someone can list their entire address, or they can just list the city and state, and that's okay if they are worried about privacy. You do want to have them right-click on the email to remove the hyperlink so that it looks really clean. And someone can include the link to their LinkedIn profile, especially if you encourage them to make a customized URL with their name so it looks clean, and put that on there. And then after their name, if they do have an identifier, like registered nurses are an RN, once they're an RN, they're going to put comma RN right after their name, so it shows up right at the very beginning. So everyone should have a header at the very top of their resume. It just kind of stands out, and this is where they could be a little creative if they wanted to use a larger font or something like that as well. The next section, people used to use objectives, but those are now outdated. So you have kind of two options that I'm going to show you here. And so one would be something like a summary of qualifications or a professional summary, where you say something like patient-centered registered nurse with a passion for personalized cardiovascular care and a goal to obtain a position on the cardiac unit at an Adventist Medical Center. Or healthcare information technology graduate with the objective to transform healthcare through information technology as a hospital billing consultant at Peace Health. So for this, I do have the student customize it with the position title and where they want to work, even if it's a specific floor or something like that. So this would be putting a little bit more in there. They could even add some soft skills if they wanted to in this. Okay, so Brandy asked a question. What if someone is trying to get hired out of state? I've heard of out-of-state bias. Do you think they have to list the address? So that is a tricky one, and that really depends. So for that, I would have them explain their situation in the cover letter either way. And I wonder, with some students, I have recommended that maybe they could get a P.O. box in the new state temporarily, or if they know someone there, they could get their mail sent there. So therefore, they could list the address of that other state instead of where they currently are, and then it would show that they're moving there. So that would be an idea. So the other thing, instead of an objective, you could just have them list the position title, something like Epic Hospital Billing Consultant with the job number. Instead of a whole statement, they could just list the job title they're looking for. So it's basically still their objective. You're just not saying objective, you're just putting in what the title is. So that's another idea for that top part. They can kind of choose which way to go. So of course, in general, we're kind of thinking about what are the key words, pulling them out of the job description, thinking about how their experiences matches the position, and tailoring it at least a little bit for each job. So you have your header, and then you have, instead of objective, position, title, or the qualification summary, and then you have education. There is a standard way of listing education. So you would put, the section, and then you would have something like Clark College, Vancouver, Washington, and then either anticipated graduation with the graduation month and year, or just the month and year if they've already graduated. So that even if I have some students that they're currently going to Clark, but they've just graduated in June, and then they're starting a new master's or bachelor's program, they're not going to graduate till June 2016. And that's totally fine. Then they would put the new, whatever is the latest or newest education at the top. So they're going to go on to that bachelor's, they're going to list that at the top, and they're going to put anticipated graduation June 2016 so that you can project ahead. And then they're going to put the degree that they earned, and then GPA if it's over a 3.5. And other honors and awards, this is a good place to incorporate it. They need to take off high school education now that they're in college, and only list education where they actually completed a program. So I have a lot of students say, hey, I went to UW and I took 4 classes. Should I put UW on there? No, because you didn't actually get a degree from there or a certificate, so you don't need to put it on there. Okay? You only need to put where you finished a degree. And then underneath that, one optional section would be related coursework, where somebody listed something like this is pharmacy tech, pharmacy law, pharmacy calculations, something to kind of boost up that section a little bit. This is an example of health IT, what you might do. So maybe the student just graduated from June this quarter at Clark, and they have their associate in arts, and then they're transferring to a Bachelor of Science. So because they've already been accepted, they're already going to that program, you'd want to list that on there because if they're looking for summer work, it looks good that they're going on to that program. Then it's great with these programs to have a certification and licenses section or certification and proficiency section where they're going to list the different licenses that they've obtained, like pharmacy technician. They're going to list different certifications like basic life support, HIPAA, first aid, things like that, that align with the program that they're in. So I know a lot of these medical programs, they will have certificates, and they do want to include those. They don't have to put the number, like for a license, that's optional. Some employers say it's easier to just glance and see that they have it, but a lot of them haven't earned it yet, so they could put anticipated. So a lot of my nursing students, they finished the nursing program, but they've not taken the NCLEX. So then they could put that, they're going to be licensed nurse anticipated in, July or August 2014, so an employer can see that they're going to be obtaining that. And for health IT, so you could also do certifications and proficiencies maybe. So you would list a certificate, a certification, maybe they're proficient in certain charting system or database management. So this could be combined with kind of a skill section if you wanted to do it that way. And you can also have a separate skills section if you'd rather do that. So just depending on how much is on their resume. So for a resume, you want to focus on hard skills. So things that you are able to prove that you can do. And something like being bilingual is really good to put on there in the healthcare field. Soft skills, it's okay to include 1 or 2, but you want to mostly end up putting those on the cover letter. So something like being organized, communication, mostly the cover letter is a good place for that. After that is where experience comes in. So for nursing, you do want to have them put clinical rotations. So I usually do some kind of a chart where they maybe have the floor they worked on, the hours in the hospital, and they need to put something along the lines of being a student nurse to show that it was related to being in school. And they could just put the range for the years that they did this. Some students want to add to this, which is great. They want to add specific skills to this section that they actually did in their clinical experiences, and that's an option too, to kind of show that they do have nursing experience. So nursing specific, you do want to put the clinicals on there. As far as the other programs, they're going to want to list externships, internships, apprenticeships, and then other types of employment. So, for example, our pharmacy technicians do 2 externships. So I have them list both of them under experience. So they would list where they worked, the location, the year, or the months in the year, so they can kind of choose. But they definitely need to include that it was an externship to show, again, that it's a school-related experience. And then some bullet points that focus on what they did in that position. And this is the same for other types of work experience. They're going to want to think about transferable skills. So despite whatever kind of other job they've had, it is good to include other experience. But you want to think about, well, a lot of pharmacy technicians, for example, have worked in retail, like at Target. Well, that's great to include on there, because that means you have cashiering experience and you were able to enter data into a computer and work with customers. All of those are good to put on there. They're all related. So that would be something that you would focus on, these bullet points, and what you would put for that. So work experience, it's great to include some kind of work experience that's relevant or recent, because an employer wants to see that they do have some kind of real-world experience if they have it. But that doesn't mean they need their whole work history. So I say, not more than 10 or 15 years ago. You don't want to date yourself either by showing that you have all this work experience. And you want to make it relevant, so maybe it has nothing to do with what you're doing now, so you just include, 1 or 2 things with some transferable skills, and that's it. So I tell students it's fine to have a 2-page resume. Most of them will only have a 1-page one. But if they do have a lot of other experience, they have a lot of volunteering, they can have 2 pages, but you want it to be 2 full pages instead of like a page and a tiny bit or something like that. There's other sections that they may want to put on there. Volunteering is great. Especially, I encourage students, like in the summer, in between programs, if they can volunteer, they can do something extra, and that would be something they'd put on there. Same with leadership activities. Maybe they're part of a club. And same with professional memberships. A lot of these medical programs, I know with pharmacy and nursing, with professional memberships, they can join. That's something that they can list on there and something they can get involved in too. So there's always something else they can be doing to kind of boost their resume. So I know this is small, this example is kind of hard to see, but I wanted to show you an example of kind of everything on one page. So you have the header at the top, a professional summary, and then the education with coursework, some licenses and certifications. For this, there was room because they had not as much experience to do a separate skills section, but otherwise you could combine those. And then they have 2 externships and then another job. So there's other ways to do this, but you can glance at it, you can see that it's clean and easy to read, and that it all fits on one page. So this would be someone that, yes, they actually did have another job that they did for a while, but they're really tailoring it, they're really focusing on the fact that they want to be a pharmacy technician. And these I can email if anyone wants these, just email me and I'll send you the actual examples that I've made. And I mentioned earlier functional. This would only be kind of more rarely that you want a functional resume, because this would be focusing purely on the skills and then listing employment history kind of small at the bottom. So I have had some students say, well, I already have 20 years experience working in the medical field, and I really want to highlight all the skills I've gained as a CNA and all these other roles. And I say, okay, if you really want to do that, you can, and maybe you would do it this way. This is an option. So for most of the students, we're doing chronological, but functional is another way to do it if they want to focus on the skill part of it. Something to be aware of is when a student applies online, especially at a hospital, there's really detailed applications, and they do want to be careful with spelling and grammar or it will get thrown out. They're going to want to create a PDF and upload the file if it's an option. If it's not an option, sometimes there's a tiny little box that you actually have to paste your resume in. And so that's what this is about. If that's the case, then they do need to have a separate kind of resume where they take all the formatting, all the bullets and everything out and paste it in the little box. And a good way to check if it's going to look okay is to email it to yourself and to go through it. Because even that little thing can make a difference if it looks easy to read still and you've taken the time to make it look nice if you really want to work somewhere. So you're looking at a resume, you want to see does it look original and professional, and you're kind of saying, is there a good balance? Did I use, consistency is one of the biggest things I see with students all the time where they have maybe different size fonts or something or the bullets don't line up. So being consistent, making sure it's kind of relevant information, you really want to gear it towards this job, and not being careless. Any kind of spelling or grammar errors, and that's going to get it thrown out. So common resume mistakes are maybe it's too long, so you don't want a 3 or 4 page because this isn't really the type of position for that. Errors, hard to read. When they use complete sentences. So I've seen this more lately where some students have a whole paragraph kind of explaining what they've done, and it's too much. It's better to break it into bullet points. And so these are some of these are kind of contradictory because you don't want it to be too sparse, you don't want too much. So it's that balance that you're really looking for overall. So this one is a resume with some problems. So I want everyone to type in at least one problem that you see with this. There are lots of them. Okay, so Matt says spelling error in the first line. Yes, so spelling, that's going to be a huge thing. They're going to see that right away, right? So obtain. What else? Yeah, so the formatting with the manager, you're right. So that doesn't look like it even goes with the work experience, which is confusing. Jennifer, yeah, so don't say objective, that's kind of outdated. Photography, yes, jobs that are irrelevant, exactly. Or you got to think about, there's always a way to rephrase something so it sounds better. So this person says hot dog and stick, well, I fed customers that jumped on lemons. Well, that's ridiculous, right? So you're going to want to rephrase it in a way that sounds professional. And I work with students all the time that go, I don't know. And then you look up, some job descriptions and you come up with a way to phrase something so it sounds like you did something fancier than you actually did, right? And yeah, don't include a picture. The picture is for your LinkedIn account because that's where your kind of online resume is. So for this, you never put the picture on there. And this just looks sloppy to me. It looks hard to read. You don't want interest on there. That used to be something that was in, but now you don't put something like that, hiking, running, camping, because that's irrelevant to the job. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with this, and we can help students do better. And I have seen some very frightening resumes this year as well. So even in real life, sometimes they can be bad, right? Okay, so I want to briefly talk about cover letters and references and a couple of other things, but I want to know if anyone first has a question about resumes that you want to ask while we're kind of on that subject. Okay, and I'll ask again at the end, but I just thought, okay, so for transition-wise, so we're going to briefly talk about, so cover letters are also really important. Employer does look at the resume first, but having a well-written cover letter can really set a candidate apart. So they do want to really tailor this, even more so than a resume, because you want to state the position, the department, and you want to reveal why you want to work at a specific company, why you're excited to work there, you know, how your perspective kind of aligns with maybe what their value system is, something like that. And this is where you really want to have them include soft skills that they're able to do. And often a job description will list several soft skills they're looking for. So if the student can explain how they utilize those soft skills and incorporate it in their cover letter, it's a good way to add that information. I'm going to show you an example to make this easier. So with the cover letter, I would put the same header on there as the resume, the date, and then the person they're addressing it to. I encourage them to actually call and see if they can get the hiring manager's name. And otherwise, they're just going to put Dear Hiring Manager. So that's the other option. So they want to talk about the position they're looking for, how they heard about the position, why they're interested in working there. And then they can do the middle part, either paragraph or bullet points, where for this, sometimes it's easier for a student to do something like these bullet points. I'm going to make this bigger, where you put my strongest qualifications for the position include, and you pull things directly from that job description, where you would say, okay, I can handle cash, I've done a cash register, I can explain procedures to customers. You know, I can do these exact things that are listed in the job description. Here's what I can do, because what they're looking for is they want to glance at a recruiter and say, you're able to do this. Okay, great. We can hire you. You can walk into the job, and you're able to do it pretty easily. Or they could write this in more of a paragraph form. But some students, it's just easier to do bullet points and do it that way. Then I have them talk about if they have done like volunteering or a club or something extra. Sometimes that's a really good way to put in those soft skills piece, where they kind of talk about how they learn to work as a team or communicate or balance the budget or do something else in those other venues. And then at the end, and a lot of students get confused about this, at the very bottom, you do want to have them sign it or do a signature that looks like they signed it. So ideally, they could really sign it, but because it is digital, what I would have someone do, if they want to do that, is to sign a piece of paper, scan it in, and then cut and paste it into here. Or, again, they can just make it, like on this one, look like they signed it by doing kind of a digital, fancier signature, and that's fine too. Okay, so cover letters are important. References, I encourage students, you know, early on in their last quarter, make sure you have 3 to 5 references. You do need to ask someone before using them as a reference. And I tell them that, you know, with your references, it's really good to keep them up to date on your progress. So if you end up getting an interview, then you want to send your references a little note or email saying, hey, I have an interview, here's my resume again, so that they kind of remember and have all that information in front of them. It just makes it easier. And on the reference sheet, a lot of students I see, they just put the name, somebody's name and their phone number. Like, well, they need to put in the person's title. They need to put in the company that they work at. Do they work at a hospital? Okay, great, right? What's the company's address? How do you know this person? What's their relationship to you? Are they your supervisor, your professor? And then asking the reference, do they prefer to be contacted by phone or email? Or do they want their work phone or a home phone? So all of these things, kind of coaching the students on what is this most relevant information that you're going to want to put on here, and having the references ready. So usually they won't ask for references until someone is already in the interview process. But if they do an online application, they may have to put this information in right from the beginning. So it's good for them to have it just in case. So this is an example of References, if they had it nicely typed out and they would have all this on a piece of paper where they would have, here's the person, their address, phone, email, how they know them. And it's great to put the same heading at the very top on those same documents. You have your resume, cover letter, and your references, and that very same header is on all three. So if someone is flipping through 300 pieces of paper, they see that yours go together. So you have that consistency piece and consistency with maybe the font size and the font type and those types of things, so they look similar. So resumes, someone should always have it proofread by one or two other people. Students should not be putting their supervisor's name or phone number under employment history or on their resume, and no references on the resume or references upon request. So don't have that. And again, don't have that section with hobbies, other interests, those types of things either. Okay, so now I want everyone to type in a few other answers to things. So what challenges do you face when reviewing resumes? Okay, so Jennifer says, what about page numbers? So that's optional. I think that's kind of a styling thing. Because the resume should only be 1 to 2 pages, you don't normally need it because of that. But if they want to show for sure that my first page is the one with education, then they can put a page 1 if they want to. So that's optional because it's more kind of like the look of it. So with everyone, what challenges do you face in reviewing resumes? If anyone has something that's a challenge for them. Jennifer, what about foreign students that have degrees from other countries? The degrees are not transferable. So for this, you're right, that's tricky because some students, like right now I have a pharmacy technician student, she was actually a pharmacist in Belarus, but she has to start completely over here because she's international and the degree does not transfer. But I still have the student if they have room listed on there, but not highlighted. So I would have them still list CORT first, the current program they're in, and then underneath it, I would still have them list that other degree just to show that they have additional education. But as far as work experience, again, they need to pick and choose. So this student, she'd worked at like 5 different pharmacies, and I said, okay, maybe we just choose the most recent one because now you have these new externships, now you have this new program, and so maybe it doesn't make sense to include a whole page of information when that isn't really applicable here. So that's a tricky one. Okay, anyone else? And another question I have is, does anyone have advice that you would like to share about reviewing resumes? Because again, what I've shared with you is what I've learned from calling employers and doing my own research, but other people may have other things they want to share. So let me know that too. So Brandy says a student has unrelated experience to what they're going into. So for that one, you have to think about, okay, in their current program, do they have externships or other things to include if they do great. And then they often will have unrelated experience. So I, Brandy, do have them usually include at least one of those work experience, maybe the most recent one, especially if they were there for a long time. Or maybe they can even include two. So some of this is a space issue between, is it one full page or two full pages? And with unrelated experience, you try to do whatever you can to come up with some kind of transferable skill. And I can usually come up with something to get that information out so that it does transfer or relate in a way. So reaching a bit like we have a cookie getting started on IG. So yeah, so sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch, and that's going to be your judgment call based on, do they have enough new information to put on their resume? So some of my students with the pharmacy tech program, they have enough information they can take off the fast food business or retail because they have enough new information, they don't need that on there. You want enough to at least fill up that one page, I guess. And Brandy says, recommended adding coursework. Yes, so coursework is great. So especially if you need to add more, I would always put the coursework on there to just kind of boost it up a little bit. And Matt says, one approach I found to be valuable is spend some time talking about language, not only for resume and cover letter, but interviewing, professional communications. Students without professional experience don't always know the lingo. Yeah, and you're right that every field does have different language, and they should be able to talk about their experience in terms of healthcare, especially for the interviewing part, because that's what the employer is going to recognize. So I know with nursing, I say, okay, great, let's look at some job descriptions and pull some of that language out so that when you talk to the employer, they can, you know, you're both on the same page about what you're talking about. So that's really good advice. And Brandy says, are you taking skills from school, not work experience? So skills could be from either one. So skills that you have is based on what skills have you gained. So for example, a skill could be being, you could put proficiency, being bilingual, that would be fine. You could put something like being proficient in a certain computer program. Maybe you learn the computer program at school and not work, and that's fine, but you're still proficient in that program. So for skills, you want to talk through, especially something that's relevant, you know, like with nursing, I ask the students, I have kind of this whole list, and I say, okay, have you filled out patient charts? Okay, great, you've done that, that's a skill that you have. Have you, thought about a medical condition and how you would address it? Okay, great, that's something that you could put for a skill. And again, for those, what I did was look at kind of these big databases, and you can do a search online, maybe nursing. And you're going to look for what are kind of these general skills, and then maybe put a list together. And I'm happy to send anyone the list that I've put together already, and have a student go through and check off what they've done so that they can kind of recognize, oh, great, I do have that skill and I have gained that experience in that area. Okay, other advice, challenges, questions that people have? And then I know that, Matt, you wanted to talk about kind of developing a health IT resume. Do you want to tell everyone about what you're thinking for that so we can chime in?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just hoping to get any feedback from anyone on how they've encouraged students to integrate their health IT training into their resume, beyond simply listing the program or certificate, but what strategies they may have used to highlight specific content or skills gained as a result. And Adriana, you covered some of that in your presentation, which was excellent, by the way, but I just wanted to see if anyone else had thoughts to share.
And then, Matt, are you planning to make kind of an example resume based on that information?
Well, yeah, my hope is to create some kind of handout to provide to students to use on their own, to work on their resumes before they come to me, so that they'll have a good start, so that we can really spend time focusing on the details. And if I'm able to develop that, I'll be happy to distribute it to the other schools as well, if they wish to use it.
Okay, so anyone have anything to share about kind of the health IT in particular? Okay, so if you could email Matt or myself anything that you have that's kind of specific to that, and that would be helpful, so we could put that handout together. And let's see, oh great, good. We have your email. And I had also emailed everyone, or Pam had when she sent this out, the example, and I'm trying to find it so I can pull it up, of the resume builder. So what I did was I did like a really basic kind of overview, here it is, of what the different sections would be. So if it is before a student sees you and you want them to get a basic idea, then I give them something like this where I say, okay, you're going to have a header with your name. You're going to have a summary with some ideas. So they have something to go off of first to give them some ideas. And then they can get something basic done. And then when they come see me, then they really have that information pretty much done already, at least basically. So it's not like that other bad example I showed you guys, kind of all over the place. It's more targeted. And this is especially helpful if you give a presentation. Sometimes I'll give a presentation to 50 students in one class, and then they all want to see me, and then I'm spending, all this time with every resume. But if I give them a basic thing to start with, then they all come in with at least, something in place and at least some sample that they have, and then we can go from there. So that's another idea, is you may want to do some kind of a builder based on what your program is. And this would look different based on the program, because again, something like nursing, I would have another section on here with clinicals, and that wouldn't be listed on this one. So that's another idea that you have. So I have, a lot of handouts and PowerPoints of additional information. Right now, we're currently working on some, veteran-specific resources. So if anyone has, any other questions or any other information, then again, you can just email me and I'll put it in here. And I'm happy to share the information that I've developed with you. All right, so anyone else have anything else? Okay, and we do have, so from today, we had Brandy, Heather, Jennifer, Matt, and Patricia. And then we have a couple call-in users. Can call-in user 3 or 6 let us know who you are before we go?
This is Rachel. I don't know what call-in user I am.
Okay, you're 6. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And then call-in user 3. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for joining the meeting, and have a great day.
Thanks, Adriana.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Adriana. That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was the final slide.